Welcome to the Fantasy Theory Podcast. Bring it in for the real thing. Today, we're going to be starting my projections. Well, I have already started my projections. You are going to start looking at them. If you are just listening to the podcast, I would recommend going to YouTube and following along because it's going to be a lot of charts, going to be a lot of visual stuff. It's going to be much, much easier if you're following along on the YouTubes. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a small tour because I kind of want to do a whole overview of my system essentially at some point. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a tour of kind of what I use to do my projections. We're going to go over the NFC West today. That's the first one that I have completed. So we're going to go over that division team by team, and I'll show you kind of how I break things down and how I get to where I got, and how I'm going to continue to evolve them as we go through training camps and the preseason and things like that till we get some really fine-tuned projections that I'm really happy with. Right now, I'm fairly happy with them, but they are definitely going to change a little bit as we get closer. So a little bit of the news.
So what do you guys hear? What's the scuttlebutt?
Just kind of some quick hitter stuff. The Steelers cut their guard David DeCastro. He's been kind of declining for a couple of years now, but still he was better than the person that they're going to, looks like, to Trey Turner, who has been also fairly bad. So another hit to the Pittsburgh offensive line, which is probably not great news for everybody. Najee Harris, certainly they're not going to be doing him a lot of favors. The weaker that offensive line is, the less time that Big Ben's going to have to get that ball downfield to people like Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. So yeah, it's not looking awesome in Pittsburgh. The New York Jets did sign offensive tackle Morgan Moses, so their line gets a little bit better. So you love to see that. And then for me, the one that's super small potatoes for us fantasy football players, but big news for me as a Denver Broncos fan. Demaryius Thomas announced his retirement. It's a little awkward because he hasn't played in 2 seasons, seems like. So just like when I saw the announcement, it's like, Demaryius Thomas has announced his retirement today. I was like, oh, geez, I thought he'd been retired for some time now, but all right. But apparently he's retiring as a Bronco, so you love to see that. A big part of our, like the Peyton Manning years and things, certainly before Peyton Manning got here, but they, obviously took off, went to 2 Super Bowls. Although I was checking out the Super Bowl 50 that they won. He did not help out a lot. He had, I think it was 6 targets, 1 catch for 8 yards. You hate to see it. I mean, Peyton Manning, he threw it was 13 of 23 for 150 yards. It was a terrible game anyway. But in any event, Demaryius Thomas retiring as a Bronco, I love to see it. So let's get into the actual show. I'm going to switch you guys over. Boop. All right. So here is the book of different sheets that I've got. I've got one for every team, and then some other resources that I use. Like on the screen here, you can see strength of schedule. That's a video that not a video, but that's an article. That's a podcast that we've already done. The ones that we're going to look at today are the ones at the top, though. Player comparison stats, team season stats, and then, of course, the 4 teams in the NFC West: Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals, 49ers. So just to give you guys kind of an overview, I'm going to start with the player comparison stats. So this is a book that's got a lot of useful information in it for me. It's broken down quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, and all of the stats that I tend to keep track of that you'll see in each individual book are all in here so that they're sortable, so I can look, I've got their averages for the last 3 years updated to a 17-game pace. But it's really nice to be able to sort through this, and, you can go by team if you want to, or if you're saying, what's an average completion percentage, the average of the 37 quarterbacks that I've got ranked here, 64.78. Who's at the top of that list? Oh, Taysom Hill, obviously, because he's the GOAT. Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr. Names that you would really not expect to be at the top of average completion percentage, but here we are. Again, for running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, they each have their own charts in here. So this is something that I reference quite a bit. Team season stats, similar, but This is the averages for the last 3 years for every team in the league. Total plays, passes, rushes, their pass rush splits, passing touchdowns, rushing touchdowns, so we can get a good idea of how each team kind of operates on the whole and get a look at when we're trying to predict where a team is going to go. I'm supposed to be more eye contact. Janelle told me more eye contact, and I haven't been doing eye contact for some time, so now you're going to get deep eye contact. I'm going to look right in your soul. But anyway... when we're trying to predict, coaching changes, staff changes, things like that, how, if a team is going from, like the Falcons, for example, when we get to them, they're bringing in Arthur Smith, that's his name, losing Julio Jones, so you expect their passing percentage to come down, their rushing percentage to go up, even though Mike Davis is their leading rusher, so that kind of throws that in a loop. But the example remains, I can use this to look and see, who do I think they're going to be kind of close to as far as an offensive scheme and an offensive mindset, and kind of get an idea of how that team looks. So it's all information. The player comparison stats and the team season stats are all things that go into crafting the projections, as I have a lot of information that I bring into here. So let's start with the NFC West champions from last year, that being the Seattle Seahawks. So each team has their own book that looks just like this. Obviously they're different colors for their team colors and things, but they're all set up the same way. So I've got the team's outlook. Let me get that out of here. The team's outlook for the last 3 years, just the same as you saw in the team season stats. All of that information is in each team's book. So their total plays, pass percentage, rush percentage, passing touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. And then we've got sections each for the running backs and for the receivers. Excuse me. So we can see what the carry share for the RB1 for the last 3 years has looked like, and everything's got its own formula so that it kind of calculates everything out for me. So you can see Tyler Lockett, for example, he's been the leading receiver the last 2 years with 23% and 21% target shares. So I can kind of see how a number one target on the team kind of looks and how a number 3 target on the team kind of looks. I've got a section for the tight end usage and things like that. So this is a general overview that helps me get the numbers put into this page. These, again, have a bunch of formulas in them so that they kind of link to, once I'm filling out each quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end page, they fill in these team stats. So what we've got here is we'll come up with the overall offense that I think is likely to happen here. Total number of passes, total number of carries, the splits, which again is informed by the team totals of the recent years, how I think that's going to fluctuate this year. More pass heavy, more run heavy. How's the defense look? That type of thing. New coaches coming in, all of that. New personnel, like I've talked about. So we'll calculate out the total number of plays, passes, and carries, and then we'll kind of go through, and I just kind of go through in order, starting with the quarterback. I'll figure out, and you'll see in the next page how I figure out these numbers, but I'll figure out, I'll take their pass attempts and figure out their completion percentage and their yards and all of that type of stuff based on their efficiency metrics over the last few years, which I found, I did projections last year, and I found that the flaw in my system was the workload. That I was not excellent at projecting, but the efficiency metrics I was deadly accurate on. They seem to be very, very predictive year over year. So we're going to get the workload dialed in a little bit more this year and hopefully have some very, very accurate projections here. We're going to be, like I've talked about before, in the Fantasy Pros accuracy grader, kind of put myself up against those people and see where we finish in that. So we'll kind of go through one by one on the positions here for each team, and then we'll come back to this screen, the team totals, and kind of go over how everything fits together. So let's start with the quarterback, that being Russell Wilson. So for each player that I'm grading, and sometimes more than that, there are some teams where I've got more, like the Cardinals we'll get to, I've got more wide receivers statted out than I'm projecting for. So we'll get to that. But in any event, at least everybody that I'm projecting for has their own kind of box like this. It's got their last 3 years. These are all projected out to, you can see kind of my formula at the top there. They are projected to 17 game paces. It's a little easier for me to go through and see when I'm making my new projections that everything kind of falls in line with where I expect it to be. Obviously, the efficiency metrics don't change, whether it's per game, full 17 games, whatever they did, it's all going to stay the same, those numbers. So you can see we've got Russell Wilson projected for 576 attempts this year, and I think that's going to be, it's going to be more than his average, but a little bit less than what he did last year. Just looking at their schedule, I didn't expect them to be in as many shootouts as they were in last year. For finishing first in their division, it's really not a murderer's row schedule. So a little bit of a back off from last year as far as total pass attempts. Very, very similar passing yards. Last year, he paced out in 17 games, paced out to 4,475 yards. I've gotten for 4,472 this year. Again, like I said, the efficiency metrics are the things that seem very, very predictive year over year. They're very static. You can see, for example, yards per attempt, 7.5, 7.9, and 8.0 the last couple of years. So all within very reasonable ranges here. Completion percentage, 65%, 66%, 68%. It's all very, very close. So those types of things I think are very predictive and help get to these numbers that I've got here. So we've got Russell Wilson, like I said, 4,472 as far as yards, 41 touchdowns for Russ, and 8 interceptions, 488 yards on the ground, and 3 rushing touchdowns. 44 total touchdowns. Last year he paced out for 45 total touchdowns. So fewer yards, 1 fewer touchdown this year than last year. But I do still think that Russ is going to be a probably top. Let's see what I went through here. Kyler's ahead of him, but that's it for at least this division. I'd say probably top 6 would be my guess by the time I'm done statting things out for Russ, top 6 quarterback. We'll move to the running backs. Very clearly, I've got Chris Carson taking the lion's share of the Seahawks carries here. 267 carries. Now, here's, I guess, a caveat is it's possible that I should do these per game because you can't expect Chris Carson to play 17 games. I've statted him for 17 games. There's just no shot, though, right? Like, Chris Carson does not play full seasons. So it's possible I should do these per game, which would maybe give me a little bit more accurate point totals at the end, because I think Chris Carson, where I've got him 1,260 yards in 17 games, my expectation is he probably plays more like 14 or 15 games, so that number certainly is probably going to dip. It might even dip below 1,000 by the time we're done with it. But essentially, these are numbers that are going to say when he's on the field, I think he's going to be really good. Probably a top 15 running back would be my guess by the time I'm done statting these out. But yeah, I think Chris Carson's somebody that you can certainly count on, at least as long as he's on the field. He is most likely to break down at some point and miss some games, but when he's available to put in your lineup, do it. You can see here, year over year, his yards per carry has been pretty static. 4.64 average over the course of the last 3 years. We've got him just a bit above that, a little below what he did last year, but his highest yards per carry outside of last year of the 2 years before that. So certainly an uptick. I think this offense is going to be with DK entering his 3rd year. I do expect this offense to be pretty potent this year. So Carson, I think his efficiency is going to go up. So we've got him at a little bit lower than last year, but still a fairly high yards per carry. And this is one instance where, I've got him 4.72 yards per carry. So what I do sometimes, I'll jump out of here. I'll go back to that player comparison stats. And we'll say, all right, 4.72 for a running back. Where's that rank, right? Average yards per carry, 4.49. So we've got him above average. Love it. He's definitely above average, so you love to see that. Let's sort this so that we've got the highest yards per carry, Raheem Mostert, J.K. Dobbins up there, those freaking monsters, ridiculous. Brian Hill 5.5. So we've got him 4.72, which is around kind of a Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, a little above that in this kind of area. So like 2023 in of the running backs that I stat, which is 70 of them. So certainly towards the top of the running backs as far as yards per carry. He is an absolute machine. So I feel absolutely comfortable with that. But I'll check these things and say, all right, I've got him at this. Is that an absolute outlier? Is that ridiculous to project him for this? And then I look at this and say, nope, it's pretty much right where I'd have him. For he's right here, 4.64 for an average for the last 3 years. Feels real nice. Let's jump back to the Seahawks here, and then Rashad Penny. I don't think he's much of a factor. He'll come in and relieve. If he's around. I mean, he's a guy freaking 3 games, 10 games, 14 games the last 3 years. We don't want to talk about Chris Carson missing games. Rashad Penny, he hadn't been around since he's been drafted, for God's sake. So, Rashad Penny, not much competition for Chris Carson. Chris Carson is going to lead this backfield once again, for sure. We can jump back to the team totals here. Each of the last 3 years, he's been the lead back. 34% last year with missing a handful of games, but 57%, 46% the other 2 years. And right now, I've got him 55.28% of the carries here. Let's bust these back. I got to sit. Little crisscross applesauce. Oh, yeah, you love to see it. I need a better chair for that. I can't say crisscross applesauce in this thing so well. In any event, so that's the running backs. Will move to the wide receivers. Now we've got our first rookie here. Did I totally knock my football around? I'm sure I did, but in any event. Dwayne Escridge is our first rookie here. So for the wide receivers, we keep track of a lot of numbers there. Targets, catches, yards. Obviously, those are very important for projections. Yards per target, yards per catch. Again, those are things that are fairly predictable. Tyler Lockett, he is a boom or bust kind of player, so his numbers are going to be a little more wild than others. And then, like I said, the catch rate, another thing that's super important because that's going to help me determine, if I say they're going to get X amount of the target share, here's the X amount of targets. So here's the number of targets that they're going to get. How many of those are they going to catch? Everything kind of comes together to get the projections here. So we keep track of the catch rate, average depth of target, yards per route run, which, I don't know, it's not super helpful for the projections, but it is, I think, a decent metric for your higher end receivers. The higher that yards per route run, I mean, look at DK Metcalf, for God's sake. What a monster. Of course, their touchdowns over the course of the season, and then their usage in the red zone, that helps determine how many touchdowns I think they're going to get. So, like I said, we do have our first rookie here, Dwayne Escridge. So what I do, you'll see it's kind of in yellow. Some of the spots are blacked out. Some of that information is just not available through at least the sources that I go through. I have not been able to find average depth of target for college players. If you know how to find it, you let me know, and that'd be great. But anyway, everything's in yellow because these are college stats. So they are broken down into a 17-game pace, which, I don't know. The efficiency metrics are really the thing that we look at here. So this is really nonsense. It doesn't need to be broken out like this. But in any event, these are the numbers that we've got. And like I said, the efficiency metrics are what we're most interested in here. Super high yards per catch for Dwayne Escridge. Super mediocre catch rate for Dwayne Escridge. Yards per target, super high as well. And then, man, oh man, look at 2018. There we go. That's a little bit better. That was the wrong number of games. I had to divide it by 6 times 17. It's divided by 11 times 17. 12 touchdowns. That's a little bit more in line with what you'd expect. So what we do is we, like I said, we determine based on our team totals what we think a number one in this offense looks like. Of course, we factor in, vacated targets, things like that, and moving around on the depth chart. I've got obviously DK Metcalf as the number one receiver going into this next year. Him and Tyler Lockett were very, very close last year, but I've got DK taking over as the number one in the system here. So we've got DK, 138 targets, Tyler Lockett, 122 targets. Lockett, you can see his catch rate is decidedly higher than DK's. So even though he's got 16 fewer targets, he's only got 2 fewer catches. He's going to catch a lot more of the balls that come his way. Most likely, we'll have DK have an uptick in that category. 58% in his first year, 64% last year. I've got him moving up again to 67% this year. So you certainly like to see that uptick in that year 3. We've got DK kind of as an animal here. 1,457 yards, 10 touchdowns. I think DK is, easy top 10 receiver. I wouldn't doubt if he's maybe top 8 by the time I'm done with this. That might be a little aggressive, but by the time I'm done with this, we'll revisit. We'll go through each and every player rather than by division. Tyler Lockett, 122 targets, almost 1,200 yards, also 10 touchdowns. They last season, so they each had 10 touchdowns last season. I've got them for 10 touchdowns again this season. They paced out for 11 in a 17-game season, so a little bit less touchdown efficiency for them. But in any event, I got them for the same touchdowns this year. Dwayne Escridge, I've got him as the third receiver, not really doing a lot. I don't expect him to be heavily involved in this offense. I've got him only for 52 targets, 550 yards, 3 touchdowns. So just not somebody you need to be drafting, not somebody you need to be worrying about at all. And then moving to the tight end, another position where you don't really need to be worrying about it. So I've got Will Dissly in here. Didn't even stat him out. He had the start to his 2018 and 2019 season was ridiculous, and then he got hurt both years. I believe ACL one year and patellar tendon another year. In any event, Will Dissly, that ship sailed, unfortunately. It was a good time while it lasted, but that ship has sailed. So they bring in Gerald Everett of Rivia, toss a coin to your Witcher. And I think he's going to be the leading tight end for the group. So the way that they've been using their tight ends lately, we'll jump back to the first page here. 10%, 11%, 7% last year as far as the total tight end targets for the number one tight end. So we've got Gerald Everett of Rivia at a 13% target share. It seems like they're going to have him be more involved, so I've got him more involved than any tight end has been in the last 3 years. And I've got him as the number 3 target on the team. 75 targets, 51 catches, 532 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So the sleeper appeal is there. I do think that he is going to be more involved than most Seattle tight ends have been. But this is an offense that runs through Chris Carson, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. Each of the last few years, they've had, what do we got here, 40% and 45% the last 2 years of the targets. And the third and beyond is just kind of left for dead. Chris Carson has been the 4th target the last 2 years. David Moore and Jacob Hollister, 8%, 11.5%-ish. Beyond DK and Tyler, there's just not a lot left to go around. So I do think that Everett will be the 3rd target on the team. It's just not going to amount to what you want. He's certainly going to have those games. And, those touchdowns could probably come up. I could see him scoring 5, maybe 6. But, for example, over here in the corner here, geez, I've got this kind of blocked off. Let me resize that just a hair so we can kind of boop. There we are. You love to see it. And now you can't see it. So up in the corner here, I've got a chart that's essentially making sure that I'm not going over on my projection. So, for example, if I say, we're gonna rush for 14 touchdowns, and then between Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, and Russell Wilson, I project 16 touchdowns. Well, that math doesn't check out. So essentially that is, again, these are all filled with formulas that autofill for me. It's essentially just to kind of keep me in check and make sure that the things that I'm saying in one spot aren't contradicted by what I'm saying in a different spot. So everything kind of lines up. But as far as the pass attempts here, we've got 576 total projected, 407 of those are accounted for between Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Gerald Everett, and Chris Carson I've got as the number 4 target ahead of Dwayne Escridge. So I guess just the 3 targets plus Penny and Carson. So that is the Seattle Seahawks. DK and Tyler Lockett absolutely crushing the target share here. I've got them for, again, 45% this year. DK, almost 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns. You love to see that. If you can get him at the end of the second round or even, good Lord, the start of the third, jump all over that. Let's move to the team that came in second last year in the NFC West, and that is the Los Angeles Rams. Bam, Rams. There they are. So we've got one thing I didn't mention with the Seahawks. I do have the coaching staff and how long they've been in that spot. So, for example, Raheem Morris, he's going to be in his first year with the Rams here. And we'll just kind of take a quick look at the last 3 years for the team. So in Todd Gurley's years, he has had about 55% of the carries 2019, 2018. Cam Akers comes in. He ends up with almost 31% of the carries last year, and he missed a couple of games and was not part of the main plan for a large portion of the season. Where that 30% comes in is at the end of the season when they just kind of piled it all on him, and that is exactly what I expect to happen here. Robert Woods, he's been the number 1 receiver each of the last 3 years. Cooper Kupp, the number 2 receiver each of the last 2 years. Would have been higher. You see he's number 4 in 2018, but he got hurt that season, missed, I want to say 8 games. We'll see here in just a second when we get to the wide receivers. So you can see that by and large, they're using a main running back, and they're using Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp as similar to the Seahawks. They've got them, the 1 and 2 are taking up, 40+% share of the targets here. And then down here, the tight ends, 14% in 2019, but 10.5% or lower each of the other 2 years that we're tracking here. So, like I said, we'll jump to the team season stats at the end, look at how everything kind of shakes down. Let's go to quarterback first. Matthew Stafford coming in. We're saying 633 pass attempts. So, again, jumping back to the main page, they've been on pace for 596.67 over the last 3 years. That's their 3-year average. Last year, it came down a little bit from 2019. And I expect that to be kind of closer to the truth. This defense is insane. They're not going to have to throw as much. They will probably run a little bit more. So let's just boop real quick. So that 596.67, that is, these are 16-game paces. These numbers I did not mess with because I don't want to kind of muddy the waters on these. So these are just actual paces in those years. So that 596.67, all right, there we go. At a 17-game pace, that's 633.96. So we've got them kind of right on pace with exactly 633. We've got them right on pace with their average over the last 3 years. So last year, I'm going to jump back one more time. That 590 on a 17-game pace would have been 626. So we've got them for just a hair more than what they did last year. Not back to the 2019 numbers, but just a bit more than what they did last year. So Maddie Stafford, again, the efficiency metrics are something that stay pretty static year over year. So we've got him with an almost 65% completion percentage, gives us almost 5,000 yards and 33 touchdowns. Not adding a lot with his legs because he's Matt Stafford. But somebody who I think rightly is probably going outside the top 12 at quarterback, but in good matchups against bad defenses with good offenses, I think there are going to be a good handful of games where Matt Stafford is going to be somebody you will be very happy to play, and he's going to provide a nice floor for you. So if you start out with Matt Stafford as your quarterback, it's not awesome, but it's going to be fine. We'll take a look at the running back, and I should have put the Cam Akers jersey up because I have him for a lot of yards. So let's look at that. A Shaklaki. So I've got him for 298 carries, which is, we'll get to the percentage share here momentarily. 298 carries. So real quick, let's jump out of here. Let's go back to that player comparison stats. And let's see, hey, 298 carries in 17 games. Where does that rank? Is that absolutely outlandish? So let's say total carries on average. Let's sort this high to low. So 298 is going to put him above. Marlon Mack is in here. Again, these are statted out to 17 games. He lost a year here, so it's only counting 2 years in any event. It's going to put him above people like Christian McCaffrey, Chris Carson, Saquon Barkley, and James Robinson in his ridiculous year last year. In the kind of era of Dalvin Cook and, if you can believe it, Joe Mixon. This is essentially where I do see him. I think he is going to absolutely be the workhorse of this team. He is going to be the running back 1, not the 1A. Daryl Henderson is going to be the RB2, not the 1B. And I think he is going to get every opportunity to be the guy here. Like we looked at initially in the 2 years when Todd Gurley was healthy, 2019, 2018. Not that he was extremely healthy in 2019. That's why they kicked his ass out. He was getting almost 56% of the carries. So we've got Cam Akers, 298 carries. I don't even have him being that efficient. A little bit more efficient than last year, but 4.58 yards per carry is not. It is a little above average, but it is not insane by any stretch of the imagination. That workload, though, with decent efficiency, I've got him going for 1,364 yards and 11 touchdowns. I do also have him ticking up in the total targets. Last season, he would have paced out for 21, and I've got him for 71 this year. That is a hell of a lot. I understand that is a huge jump. Here are two things that I think are going for that. Last year, he had an 82% catch rate on those targets. He was extremely efficient with them. So I think they're going to increase his role. We've already heard Sean McVay say that they're going to increase that role for him. There's nothing that they can't do with Cam Akers. So they're going to increase that role for him and bring in Matt Stafford. He throws to the running backs a good deal. We had Theo Riddick as a kind of fringe fantasy player just because he caught so many balls year over year. Obviously, DeAndre Swift last year had a lot of targets, so I do think we're going to see a severe uptick in Cam Akers' involvement in the passing game. I've got him for 478 yards in the receiving game. Come here, you crazy mouse. So 1,364 on the ground, 478 through the air, 1,842 yards this year. That's a lot. And I understand that that's a lot. But like I said, I am firmly of the opinion that Cam Akers is going to be the guy in LA. I think this offense is going to hum. I think he's going to have a lot of scoring opportunities. I think they're going to be leading. So he's going to get a lot of, he's going to kill the clock a lot. I think Cam Akers is in for a huge year. Daryl Henderson, on the other hand, he's a big bum. I know he was more efficient last year than Cam Akers was, but he's just not it. He's been on the team for years now. I think it's pretty clear he's not it, and he's not who the team wants to go with. Even if he was the better running back, he is not who the team wants to give the rock to so often. So sorry about your luck, Daryl Henderson. I feel like I've said his name differently each time I've said it. Darnell Anderson. Have you heard that one before? That's a fantasy footballer's one. Let's move to the wide receivers here. So this is an example where I've got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Van Jefferson, and Desean Jackson. I've got all the research done on them, but I'm not statting out Van Jefferson. I only stat out so many wide receivers, and he is just not making the cut here. So sorry about your luck, Van Jefferson, but we'll at least keep track of you, buddy. So we've got Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, 1A, 1B, once again. Robert Woods leading the way, once again. Very, very similar as they have been for the last few years. For example, let's look at the last 2 years, 15 and 16 games played for Kupp and Woods in some order. But they've been, on their paces, 1,200 yards, almost 1,300 yards for Robert Woods in 2019, and 1,234 for Kupp. Last year, 995 for Woods and 1104 for Kupp. So they've been really close to each other the last few years, and I don't expect that to change much here. I've got them both for over 1,100 yards, and Kupp I've got for 8 touchdowns, Woods for 7 touchdowns. Desean Jackson, he's going to be somebody whose numbers are going to change a lot as I go through this. Is he going to be healthy? How healthy is he? Is he going to play a full slate of games? Doubtful, obviously, very doubtful. But for right now, I've got him kind of tangentially involved in the offense. I mean, he's got half the targets that Cooper Kupp does, for God's sake. Really high yards per catch, of course. I think Matt Stafford likes somebody that he can kind of air it out to a little bit. Maybe that Marvin Jones type of role. Kenny Golladay always had a high ADOT and a high yards per catch. So I think Desean Jackson is somebody who is going to be involved to some degree. Obviously, I don't think to a large degree, but he'll be involved a little bit. Not somebody that I think you should be drafting. He's just going to be too hard to predict. I've only got him for 3 touchdowns. So, maybe in best ball, it's super, super late. But even then, I think he's only going to give you a game or 2 where you would even make your roster in best ball. So him, just somebody I would just stay very, very clear of. And for the tight end, Tyler Higby, he's kind of alone here. So I've got his target share increasing. He had the ridiculous end of the season in 2019 where he got just an enormous target shared in the last, I think it was 5 or 6 games. And that kind of inflated his numbers a little bit. Last year, 68 targets when he was splitting with Gerald Everett. So 68 targets on a 17-game pace. Actually 60 targets. But again, that number bumps up when we're looking at the 17-game paces here. So I've got him for 82 targets, 61 catches, 690 yards. So already we've got him ahead of his former teammate Gerald Everett, and 6 touchdowns. So Higby, somebody who I think has certainly more upside than Gerald Everett does in Seattle. I think he's going to be decidedly more involved. We'll see here in just a second. I've got him, I believe, as the 3rd target. Yeah, because he's definitely ahead of Cam Akers, who I believe is the 4th target. Obviously, he's got 11 more targets than Cam Akers. So Higby's somebody that I do think that you can draft, and if you pass on the top 3, 4, wherever your cutoff is for the good tight ends, it should probably be 3. There's certainly a tier 2 that's got Hawkinson, Andrews, Pitts probably is in that tier, and then beyond that it's kind of a wash. Maybe Goddard's in that 2nd tier, but if you're passing on the 1st and probably 2nd tier of tight ends, Higby is somebody who you've watched the drafts that I do, the best ball drafts. I am a fan of taking multiple late tight ends and just hoping that one of them hits. Higby is definitely somebody who is going to be in my consideration for that now that I've done these projections. Just kind of thinking about him. I don't want to say randomly, but before I did the research, he is not somebody who kind of stuck out to me as somebody who had a huge opportunity and therefore had a huge ceiling. But now that I've done this and kind of looked at these numbers, I think he's got a real shot at being a serviceable tight end, maybe finishing tight end 7, 8, somewhere in there would be my guess. So let's look at the team as a whole here. So we've got, like we've talked about, we got Matt Stafford, 4,900 yards, 33 touchdowns, 32 carries. Cam Akers, I've got him for more than the Todd Gurley workload. I've got him for almost 60% of the carries, which, like I said, these are numbers that are going to kind of get fine-tuned and dialed in. These are kind of broad strokes, my thoughts on these players right now. That percentage of the carry share may come down a little bit, maybe closer to that 55% that Todd Gurley kind of was at. But again, I do really think that Cam Akers is going to be given a bell cow workload this season. Daryl Henderson, D. Henderson. We've got him for 20% of the carry share, which by and large, the number 2 on the team, it's a little bit more than the typical number 2. Malcolm Brown, for crying out loud, he had 9% 3 years ago and 17% the year before that, or the year after that, I suppose. Daryl Henderson had 29% when it was a three-headed committee last year. So I've got him for 20.88% of the carries, which is higher than the number 2 averaged out to the last few years. But, there is no denying that he is a good football player. He's efficient with the ball in his hands, so I think he'll get more use than the number 2s have been lately. But it's not going to be a split here for sure, if you ask me. And you're listening to me talk about fantasy football right now, so for all intents and purposes, you are asking me. So there. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, I've got them for about 42% of the target share between them. And 15 touchdowns between them. You love to see that. Tyler Higby, like we talked about, I've got him as the number 3 receiving option. Cam Akers as the number 4. Desean Jackson, we've got him statted out, but not part of this chart here. And, of course, Van Jefferson, we did not chart out. So this is, right now, my outlook for the Rams. I will reiterate one more time, and probably 2 more times as we're going through 2 more teams. But these are numbers that these are not written in stone just yet. These are my first pass through. More information is going to come out. These numbers are going to get, dials are going to get turned, levers are going to get pulled, things like that, where we're going to fine tune these. And once these go up on the website, which I wish that I had more time to dedicate to this so I could get this done very, very quickly, but it's probably going to be a couple weeks. Doing this division took me probably 4 days with the amount of time that I've got to dedicate to this. So they will go up on the website. They will continue to be fine-tuned, and as we get closer to actual draft season, I hope to have them very, very refined for you guys to follow along with. If you are, by chance, in any leagues in which I am drafting, don't snipe me. I hate you. Don't do it. God, you're going to do it. I know you're going to do it, you rotten bastards. Let's move to the third-place team, the Arizona Cardinals, who... Man, if they win the division this year, is anybody going to be surprised? Like, this offense looks great. They picked up J.J. Watt. This defense is probably going to be pretty decent. I think they've got a shot. Seahawks and the Rams obviously look pretty good as well. So I really do. And the 49ers, man, honestly, that defense is going to get healthy again. They lost, of their 11 starters, I think they had 15 of their 11 starters injured last year, those poor 49ers. So, this division seems super competitive. Holy shit, these are going to be really good games, especially the in-division games. They're going to be really nice. So this is the last 3 years for the Cardinals. You can see that our average running back 1 has been about 51% of the carries. David Johnson had an absolutely ridiculous year where he had almost 73% of the carries. That is absurd. So it's certainly pulling up that percentage by quite a bit. Last 2 years, Kenyan Drake, 31% in 2019. That was when he came in midway through the season. Last year, almost 50% of the carries. Kyler Murray, last year, he was the second back. With almost 28% of the carries. That guy runs all over the damn place, and that probably stays the same. Now, last year, DeAndre Hopkins came in. He had almost 28% target share. Man, that is absurd. That's ridiculous. But it's probably going to happen again because he's just that damn good. Christian Kirk, each of the last 2 years, has been the number 2 receiver. He's going to come close, but I don't think that's happening again. I do think that they brought in A.J. Green. They're going to give him a shot. A.J. Green has been pretty terrible for a bit now, but maybe being down in the desert, they'll revitalize him a little bit and get him back on track. So I do have A.J. Green as the number 2 target here this year. That tight end position for the Cardinals, just absolutely unusable. Back in 2018, they had Ricky Seals-Jones, who had almost 14% target share, but it took an absolute nosedive since then, and I do not expect that to change this year. We'll look at the quarterback, Kyler Murray. Got him for 592 attempts, which is one fewer than he would have paced out for last year. So these numbers, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, they're very similar to what he did last year. I've got him for one fewer attempt, the exact same number of completions, 0.03% on his completion percentage up, and what is that, like 12 more yards? I mean, these are the numbers. This is where I think he's going to be. From time to time, you'll see when we get to wide receivers here, DeAndre Hopkins, he had very, very similar back-to-back years. It just happens like this sometimes. Again, these numbers will get kind of tweaked and dialed in a little bit, so it's possible that it won't look so damn similar, but for right now, it's pretty goddamn similar. So we've got him passing for 4,231 yards, 29 touchdowns, one more touchdown than he had last year, rushing for 793 yards, a little bit less than he would have paced out to last year. What did he actually have last year? 819 yards, so fewer yards this year. But all in all, he's going to be a top three, maybe top two quarterback, probably top three. In my projections as they sit right now. And he's going to be pretty much the guy that he was last year when he finished number 3. We'll see how quarterbacks around him kind of flesh out and where he actually finishes based on this. For the running backs, I've got James Conner taking over that Kenyan Drake role. I do think that he's going to be their lead back as far as carries, certainly not as far as targets. That'll certainly stay Chase Edmunds' job, but they very clearly don't want to give Chase Edmunds a feature role as a between the tackles guy. That's just not his strong suit, and they're just not going to do it. So I do think James Conner is going to I've got him here for 214 carries. Not being terribly efficient with those carries, so failing to eclipse 1,000 yards, but 10 touchdowns. Kenyan Drake, if we jump back to the first page here, Kenyan Drake, he had 8 touchdowns in a little over half a season, or I think exactly half a season when he first came over in 2019, 10 touchdowns last year. This offense is going to be, like I said, very potent. I think they're going to score a lot of points, and James Conner is going to get a lot of opportunities down there by the goal line. It's crazy. Like Kenyan Drake last year, he had 10 or 12 goal-to-go carries. Kyler Murray had 7, I'm fairly confident, and old Chase Edmunds had a goal line carry. So, yeah, he's just not going to get those valuable touches. James Conner is going to get the bulk of those. I think that with the way that this offense is, you got to make sure you're accounting for Kyler Murray down there by the goal line. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, they're adding AJ Green. If he's anything, you got to account for him. And I think James Conner is going to do some work down there by the goal line. So we've got him for 214 carries, just under 1,000 yards for rushing yards, but bumping just over that in total yards with 216 in the receiving game and an additional touchdown. So James Conner, somebody that I'll probably be looking to put on the end of my bench, a little depth piece for running back, and if he kind of hits this range that I'm projecting here, he'll be certainly usable. If he doesn't, well, he's going in the probably 8th, 9th round, something like that. No, he's probably going sooner than that. Psych, according to NFC ADP, he's going at the 111th pick. So that's just a little bit into the 10th round. No, into the 9th round. Middle of the 9th round. No, that is the 10th round. Yeah, start of the 10th round. Math is hard. I don't have a degree in mathematics. So, yeah, with a later round and maybe even double-digit round, depending on how terrible I am at math, ADP, certainly somebody that I will be looking to put on my teams. Like I said, if he hits this kind of range, you're going to feel over the moon that you took him there. If he doesn't, well, hell, man, you took him in the 9th, 10th round, so cut him from your team and get him out of here. Chase Edmunds, similar-ish role to what he had last year, which is carrying the ball some amount of the time, a handful of times a game, being fairly efficient with them, but not really a 1A, 1B situation, definitely a 1-2 situation. In the passing game, certainly he'll be involved. I've got him for fewer targets this year than last year, mostly because they brought in A.J. Green, and I think that they're going to kind of give that. And also, Randall Moore? Let's check. I can never remember. Oh, my God, nailed it. I don't know why, but for some reason I have trouble remembering which one went to Baltimore and which one went to Arizona between Rondale Moore and Rashad Bateman. But Rondale Moore is the one here. So with a decided slot receiver here, I think that Chase Edmonds' receiving role comes down a little bit. I've got him for 14 fewer total targets, 14 fewer total catches, and about 100 fewer yards, about 90 fewer yards. So I do see Chase Edmonds' role going down a little bit. They've got James Conner, who has proven to be probably a better pass catcher than Kenyan Drake. For example, Kenyan Drake, his target share has been 6% and 5%, and I've got James Conner for probably right in that range, but certainly somebody that I would imagine somebody that they will trust with the ball in the receiving game more than they did Drake last year. For the wide receivers, I've got so damn many of them kind of researched here, but we're going to stat out just for DeAndre Hopkins. Like I said, look at his numbers. His pace is actually 170, 173 targets. So in actuality, it was 160, 150, and 163. So he has been right in that finite range year over year. So sometimes it happens. So me having Kyler Murray being essentially the same player that he was last year, it certainly looks weird, but it does happen. So we've got DeAndre Hopkins for 159 targets this year. Again, with them bringing in Rondale Moore and A.J. Green. Oh, I do have Christian Kirk as the number 2. How do you like that? In any event, with them bringing in Rondale Moore and A.J. Green and likely losing Larry Fitzgerald, I think he's going to lose just a hair of those targets. I mean, almost 28% target share was a little ridiculous, but he's still going to have an absolutely absurd target share. So we've got DeAndre Hopkins for almost 1,450 yards, 9 touchdowns, which is more than what he's gotten the last 2 years. But I do think that he's going to rebound in that category. I mean, last year he got 21 targets in the red zone, or at least he paced out for 20 actual targets. 21 was what he paced out for targets in the red zone. For him to only come away with 6 touchdowns is just ludicrous. It's an outlier, and I do expect that number to go up. Like I've said, the offense I think is going to be very, very good. So I do expect those touchdowns to come up. So 1,443 yards, 9 touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be top 5 receiver for sure. Christian Kirk I've got as the number 2, being fairly pedestrian as he has been by and large. AJ Green, I've got him just behind Christian Kirk, 86 targets. Also fairly pedestrian. I am hopeful that that Desert Air revives AJ Green to some degree, playing with DeAndre Hopkins, so he doesn't have to carry that load quite as much. Although to be fair, he didn't really have to carry the load last year in Cincinnati, and he was still pretty terrible. So we'll see what happens with AJ Green. This is another thing that as we get through training camps, if AJ Green is looking real good, I'm going to probably move him ahead of Christian Kirk and maybe bump up his efficiency a little bit. If he's looking pretty terrible, then, I've kind of already got him at the terrible marker there. So I may not bump him down too much, but we'll see. We'll see exactly what happens. Rondale Moore, I've got with 54 targets, just under 400 yards. So Ronda Moore, not somebody who I'm terribly excited about in fantasy this year for redraft. Certainly somebody you can look at in Dynasty, but I don't think that he's going to provide a lot of value for you for probably a couple of years, unfortunately. Maybe definitely not this year, probably not next year, but AJ Green is going to be gone here very shortly, maybe after this year. Maybe he's there 2 years. DeAndre Hopkins probably has a couple years left there in Arizona. So it'll be a while for Rondale Moore, is what I'm trying to say. And then, like I said, the tight end, fairly unusable, only 35 targets for Max with 2 X's, Williams. So yeah, just nothing to see here. Nothing to see here at all. So we'll jump to the team season stats here. We've got James Conner with 45% of the carries, Chase Edmunds with 22.25% of the carries. DeAndre Hopkins, he's got almost a 27% target share, which is, it's ridiculous, man. Like, we'll get to Devontae Adams, who had somewhere in that range. But, hey, man, he's DeAndre Hopkins. He is easily the best receiver on this team. It is not close. In years past, you could argue A.J. Green, but that is a ghost of Christmas past for sure. And that ship is very much sailed. DeAndre Hopkins, best player on this team. They're going to get the ball in his hands every opportunity that they get, just like they did last year. So almost, like I said, 27% target share. It looks crazy, but hey, man, that's just the reality in Arizona. Christian Kirk is the number 2 target with almost 16%. AJ Green with about 14.5%. And then Chase Edmunds as the number 4 target with just below 10% target share. Seems about right to me. And for our final team here, we will have the unfortunate 49ers, who, man, that defense just fell to shit last year. And George Kittle got hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt because that's all that he knows how to do. Just a bad year for the defending Super Bowl runner-ups. Can you defend a runner-up position? Probably not. But in any event, we see that, you know what it is for the 49ers running backs. It is a mishmash. It is unpredictable. It is spread out across so many people. We've got Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Matt Breida in years past, Tevin Coleman. Everybody who's got a pulse is getting some amount of the carries there. So their lead back each of the last 2 years has not even hit 29%, man. Some RB2s on some teams are hitting more than that. But on the on the Kyle Shanahan 49ers, man, your lead back, he's not even getting a third of the carries. You can't count on these people, man. It's tough. It is tough. Their leading receiver in 2019-2018 was George Kittle, far and away. In 2018, look at this. He more than doubled the target share of the person behind him. More than doubled. The number 2 target on the team. Ridiculous. Whoo boy. Last year, he played in only 8 games and still had an 11% target share. So, you pace that out, and that's, right back where he's been, up in that upper 22%, maybe higher than that target share. If he had played more games, just absolutely ridiculous. So we'll jump to the quarterback, and man, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're watching this on YouTube, your eyes have already gone to, I know the thing that you're looking at is Jimmy G or Trey Lance. What's the split here? I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't know. I tried to find a way where I could see, at what point in the season is their record going to be to the point where they kind of want to make that shift. I couldn't find it. Just couldn't find it. They start out, they've got a week 6 bye. Their opening schedule is Detroit, Philly, Seattle, Arizona, and Green Bay. Those are their first 5 games. 3 of them are on the road. But I think the way that this defense is going to bounce back, they've got Ayuk, they've got Debo, they've got George Kittle, they've got Trey Sermon and Raheem Mostert. That's his name. Jeff Wilson obviously is going to be out for half the year, maybe a little more than that. This offense is looking good. They've always been extremely efficient. I really think that they can start out, 3-2. Maybe they lose to Green Bay if Aaron Rodgers is there. They probably lose to either the Cardinals or the Seahawks would be my guess. So I think they can start out 4-1 when they hit the bye. They could be 3-2. If they're 2-3, then that bye is probably a point where they make a switch. But I do think that I do assume right now that Jimmy Garoppolo starts the season as their quarterback. Trey Lance, you can see in his chart here, 2019, he was absolutely on fire. Last year, he only played one game. So he's just, and 2018, which I don't track. I only track 2 years for rookies. But 2018, he didn't play very much either. So they've got one season sample size to say whether or not this kid is good. So I do think they're going to bring him along a little bit slower, get him up to speed at a decent pace rather than kind of rushing him out there. So I do think they're going to start with Jimmy Garoppolo. And again, caveat, these numbers are going to change as we get closer to I've said it 100 times. Just keep that in mind. But as of today, I do think Jimmy Garoppolo starts the season. If he gets the team to a winning record before the bye, I think he holds on to that job. I think he is a quarterback who can take this team to the playoffs again, maybe win the division. And I could see him keeping the job all year. This could be an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes kind of scenario where, the Chiefs, they trade up, they take Patrick Mahomes, who obviously he's pretty good, we've come to find out. But they played Alex Smith all year until week 17 when they unleashed him on my beloved Broncos. But, until the point where the last week didn't matter, they ran Patrick Mahomes out there at that point. I think that could be what happens here. I think Jimmy Garoppolo, he gets hurt all the damn time, so maybe he, his leg falls off or something like that, and they put Trey Lance in for that. But you can't predict injuries. You can't predict them. You can't project them. So I've got Jimmy Garoppolo playing the large majority of the season here. I've got Trey Lance projected for 2 games only, plus a little bit of, maybe he'll get a goal line carry here or there. Maybe he'll come in for a snap here or there during the games that Jimmy G is starting. But I do think that Trey Lance, I've got him projected for 2 games only. It's possible he only plays 1, but I do think that with they finished 4th in the division last year, so they're playing all the 4th place teams in the other divisions that they're playing. So they've got a decent schedule. I could see them getting to a point where, maybe another team has already locked up, the Rams, the Seahawks, or the Cardinals has already locked up the division. So they're only playing for a wild card spot. So maybe those, week 18 doesn't really matter for them. They've already got that wild card spot locked up. So I've got Trey Lance for 2 games right now. I think Jimmy G plays most of the year. I was trying to kind of gauge the industry opinion on this. And like, for example, I looked at the UDK that the fantasy footballers had, the ultimate draft kit, which is incredible, by the way, not a sponsor at all, but I'm sure a lot of you have it already. But if you don't, so much information in there. But anyway, I looked at the splits that Andy, Mike, and Jason have in the UDK, and like one of them's got like almost 50-50, like 8 games, 9 games. And another one of them has Trey Lance playing all but like 3 games. And then another one of them has Jimmy Garoppolo playing all season. So it's like, all right, this is no goddamn help to me. So I just kind of went with my gut. What I think is based on the way that the season looks, I think they're going to get to that bye with a winning record. They're going to keep Jimmy G going. Trey Lance is going to come in when they can throw a game. When the game doesn't matter to the postseason is when I think he'll play. So Jimmy Garoppolo, let's get to the stats here. I've got him for 479 attempts, almost 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns. Not adding a lot on the ground, only 67 yards and another touchdown. Don't draft him. Do not draft him. In your best ball leagues, if you want to draft Trey Lance, I'm absolutely on board with that. I think he is going to add a lot with his feet, not as much through the air. He's going to be probably more like a Jalen Hurts than a Lamar Jackson type or a Kyler Murray type. But certainly he's got a lot of upside with his feet. Like I said, I've only got him for 64 pass attempts, which is only going to give him 474 yards. I think a little bit lower completion percentage as a rookie, as an unproven rookie at that. But then adding 200 rushing yards with his feet on 5.54 a carry, which is, in those player comparison stats, this is a super good tool. I expect him, like I said, to be more of a Jalen Hurts type than a Lamar Jackson type. So I kind of looked at what is the average of, Lamar Jackson, a Jalen Hurts, a Kyler Murray. What does that look like as far as yards per carry? Then deduct a little bit because he's a rookie and because he's not as, I don't think he is as insane of an athlete as Lamar. I mean, he rushed for 1,100 yards in 2019, so maybe he is. But in any event, I bumped him down a little bit from that average for being a rookie and things like that. So if he gets this starting job, I think he is going to do some really impressive things with his legs. I think it's probably bad news for the pass catchers not named George Kittle, because I think he's just going to feed the shit out of George Kittle. But we'll see as we get closer to the start of the year. It's going to be much clearer who is going to be starting for this team. For the running backs, I've got them kind of split a little bit. Raheem Mostert, 205 carries. Trey Sermon, 141 carries. I think I've got these pretty front-loaded because I think once Jeff Wilson comes back, like I said, he's only going to play 8 or 9 games. But I still have him for 73 carries, which is almost 10 a game if he's playing 8. Which is about in line with where he's been. So I think Mostert and Sermon are going to pad their numbers towards the start where they're going to be kind of a 1-2 punch. They've got like Jermichael Hasty on the team, but I think that it's going to be Mostert and Sermon as the 1 and 2 with a couple of other people kind of filtering in. Maybe even Trey Lance kind of flitting in there like maybe a little bit similar to the way that the Saints use Taysom Hill. Maybe something like that. So in any event, it's going to be a little bit more front-loaded, and their share is going to taper off as Jeff Wilson comes back and gets back up to speed. But for now, I've got Mostert with 205 carries for 1,100 yards. San Francisco running backs are extremely efficient, man. I've got him for 5.38 a carry, which is towards the top of the league as far as efficiency. Trey Sermon, I've got him less efficient because I don't know, man. I didn't like him coming out of college. I don't think he's insane, but then again, neither is Raheem Mostert. Honestly, it's just this scheme and this system is very friendly to the running backs. So I've got him for an above average yards per carry, which, in any other situation that he landed in, I probably would have had him closer to 4 flat, maybe even a high 3s. So here we've got him at 4.5 yards per carry, 633 yards, 5 touchdowns for him, 9 for Mostert. And through the air, not adding a ton. Mostert, 200 yards. Trey Sermon, 87 yards. He was not much of a pass catcher there in college. And then, like I said, Jeff Wilson, he's only going to play half the year, so not somebody you're going to draft. Maybe somebody you pick up off the waiver wire as it gets closer to his return. For the wide receivers, just Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, man. This is going to be a very concentrated target share between these two and George Kittle. We'll see that here when we get to the team total stats. Brandon Ayuk, I've got taking over as the number 1 receiver, which he was last year. But of course, Deebo was hurt, only played 7 games. Kittle also hurt, only played 8 games. Brandon Ayuk also hurt. Man, I don't know what it is about the 49ers, man, but like Jimmy Garoppolo's always hurt. Those running backs are coming in and out. Everybody's hurt around there. It's ridiculous. So, like I said, I've got Ayuk as the number 1 target, 121 targets. Deebo as the number 2 with 103. Ayuk I've got going over 1,100 yards. Deebo I've got just barely missing 1,000 yards. And if we jump to the team totals here, you will see that the leading receiver hell, not even just the leading receiver, but any receiver. The last 3 years, none of them have had more than 5 touchdowns. That is a hard cap. Each of the last 3 years, it has been exactly 5 for the number 1 receiver. For the number 2 receiver, it's 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 1, 5, 5. Nobody's had more than 5. 5 is a hard ceiling. We're going to break that this year. We're playing 17 games, so that number kind of goes up by default. But I've got Ayuk with 6 touchdowns and Deebo Samuel with 4. He ain't going to break it, but Ayuk certainly will. You're going to break that 5 number. Curse of 5 is done. Get it out of here. 6 touchdowns for Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk is going to be somebody who you'll be all right having as your number 2. I think you would love to have him as your number 3. Deebo Samuel, somebody you'll be all right as a number 3. And, if you can have him as your flex or a bench piece, I think that's even better. But Ayuk, over 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns. I think he's gonna continue to ascend, and moving forward, he'll probably be even better than that, in the coming years. And then George Kittle leading the way, like George Kittle does. That guy is a freak. 131 targets, 100 catches, even 1,361 yards. I mean, 7 touchdowns. I do have him also breaking the five rule here in San Francisco. I don't know what there is to say about George Kittle, man. He is absolutely ridiculous. Travis Kelce's still in the league, so he's number 2. He's going to be number 2 until Kelce is done, which is probably a year or 2 away. With George Kittle, he is number 2 with a bullet for me. 1,300 yards, almost 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. Draft him early if you want to take him in the second round. Got no problem with it. Seems like he's going at the kind of the tip top of the 3rd round. Pull that trigger, man. You're going to be very, very happy. He is going to dominate. So we've got the breakdown here. I've got Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo both statted out. Like I said, Raheem Mostert, I've got him for 42% of the carries, and Trey Sermon 29% of the carries. If we look at the stats here, we talked about the number 1 running back is about 30%. That's with the rotation, people getting hurt, things like that. Matt Breida was up at 36%. The reason that I've got Raheem Mostert at 42.62%, like I said, Jeff Wilson's going to be out, and I don't think that they've got JaMychal Hasty ready to kind of step up and take a third of the carries. So I think at the start of the year, those first 8 weeks, Raheem Mostert's role is going to increase, where he would normally get 10, 11, something like that carries per game. I think he's going to be closer to 14 or 15 to start the year, when it's just him and Trey Sermon kind of 1A, 1B, and maybe somebody like JaMychal Hasty as the 2 behind them. So I think it is going to be front loaded, and I think it's going to taper off as we get closer to Jeff Wilson coming back. But since it is going to be front loaded, I've got him with a higher target or a higher carry share than the normal receiver here normal running back here for the 49ers. Trey Sermon, almost 30%, 141 carries. George Kittle, like we talked about, 131 targets, 24% of the targets. Brandon Ayuk, 22.28% of the targets. Deebo Samuel, almost 19% of the targets. So between the 3 of them, we've got 24.13 for Kittle, 22.28 for Brandon Ayuk, 18.97 for Deebo Samuel. Those guys combine for almost 66% of the targets, which, it's about right. It's about right. I do also have Richie James as the number 4 target here. I don't think any of the running backs are going to reach that level. So we've got Richie James here. I don't have him kind of researched out because, I don't know. Yeah, he's not somebody that you need to care about at all in fantasy. Had that one huge game, like 9 of 13 for 184 yards and a touchdown last year. Huge game when everybody else was dead. So I've got him as the number 4 target right now, just not anybody you need to concern yourself with. So I didn't bother kind of researching him and giving him his own spot in the wide receiver rankings. So that is it for the NFC West. The Seahawks, the Cardinals, the Rams, and the 49ers. This division looks to be absolutely sick. I cannot wait to see these divisional games and a lot of the games that they're going to play. Like I said, 49ers, they play Green Bay at the start of the season. If Aaron Rodgers is there, can't wait to see that. That's a replay of the NFC Championship game from a couple years ago. Just an absolutely crazy-looking division. Very good defenses, very good offenses. Very exciting for sure. It is. It's all downhill from here. little bit more newfound glory for you. But yeah, that is going to do it for the episode this week. You know what? No, it's not, because I have a super fun me story. 2 of them actually. Bonus me story. So I had a little bit of a. I wouldn't call it rough because everything ended up just fine, but like a little embarrassing stretch of a night. Broke the couch. Went ahead and broke the couch. So that's not great. The couch, it kicks out. It's a recliner couch. And instead of putting the feet down, I slid off of it. And I know you can't tell from the video. I look so trim and fit, but I am a great big fat guy. And I bent the shit out of the couch. So I tried with some pliers and stuff to like bend it back in, but apparently my arms are not as strong as my weight and I can't do it. So it is rough for you got to really, if you want it up, you got to really get into it and get the legs up so you can kick your feet out. If you want it down, you got to finagle it just right so that it kind of goes in at a spot where it like kind of locks out right now, and it's just a whole mess, man. I broke the couch. So upsetting. But it wasn't done just yet. We also went down to the hot tub, and man, we got in there, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to just sit in silence, because it was like close to 10 o'clock, so nobody's down there, lights are all off, but for some reason it's still open according to the hours that it keeps. So cool, we'll go down there even in the dark. I was like, you want to know what? Let's put on a little bit of music. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was going to watch Bo Burnham's new special Inside, which is absolutely fantastic. Please watch that. It is incredible. If you like Bo Burnham, it is a comedy special, but it's not like a laugh a minute. It gets dark. It gets somber. But I am a person who loves Bo Burnham. I think he's a genius. It's an absolutely incredible special if you have not watched it yet. Anyway, so we're sitting in the hot tub and I've got my phone and I'm like, oh man, I'm going to dump this thing in the hot tub for sure. That's just the way that this has been going. I'm definitely going to do it. 15 minutes later, boop, right in the water. Unbelievable. Phone actually ended up being fine, so that's awesome. Didn't have to put it in rice, anything like that. Like, it was literally still playing music when I pulled it out of the water. It's totally fine, but like the initial shock of like, oh, there it goes, right to the bottom. Just son of a gun. Dropped it right in the hot tub. It's probably all nasty. The hot tub is probably disgusting. Shouldn't be putting that thing on my face. Got to clean that thing off. So actually what I'm going to go do right now. Can't believe I didn't think of that before. So that's going to do it for this episode. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. I know right now we don't have enough hours on there for it to be something that YouTube kind of puts toward the forefront. So even trying to find it by searching for the name is a little tough. So please do subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be able to find your way back for the content that we're putting out every week now. If you did enjoy the video, please do one like this. There's a button going to look very similar to this type of shape right here. Go ahead and click that one. If you are listening on the podcast, go over to the YouTube, do those things that I just said, regardless of if you're listening on YouTube or not. Just get over there, hit that subscribe, hit that like button. Big help from me. Also, for the podcast, the big help is leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Your honest opinion certainly helps to fine-tune the show, get the content that you are looking for in the efficient manner that you are looking for. So your honest feedback certainly helps me, help you, help everybody. So leave that review. Check out the website. This is where the the projections are going to start going up as I get them completed. I'm going to add them in. That is thefantasytheory.com. Follow us on Instagram. That is thefantasytheory.com. Not .com at all. At The Fantasy Theory, and on Twitter, Fantasy Theory 1. You only get 15 characters. The Fantasy Theory is 16. Twitter hates us. It's a whole thing. And then lastly, in the comment section on this video, tell me what you think. Tell me why you think I'm out of line on Cam Akers. I know that I am going to be higher on him than is probably reasonable. Anybody that you agree with, disagree with, think I'm too high, too low on, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your comments and kind of get that feedback going. So please do that. But that is everything that we've got for this week. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. I do truly appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.